Hi, this is Professor Charlie Evans, and this morning I'm going to be talking a little bit about the age of imperialism. That's a period roughly from about 1850 to 1914 that we cover in both History 102, History of the Western World, and History 112, History of World Civilization. The first thing I want to say is that imperialism has been with world history since very, very early on. Um, when we study Western and world history, you study about the age of the Roman Empire, you study about Chinese Empire, you study about empire in India, you study about Charlemagne's empire, you study about the early colonial empires set up in the 16th century, the Portuguese, Dutch, English, French, you study about empires in the 18th century. I mean, all of Western and world history involves the age of empire. And that's what really imperialism is an age of empire when the countries of northwestern Europe and including the United States set up worldwide empires. Um, so let me first give a really quick definition of what imperialism is. Imperialism has been defined as the rule or control, political or economic or cultural, direct or indirect, of one state, nation, or people over other similar groups. So, in some cases, imperialism involves the actual physical control of a society by another society. In other cases, imperialism can take far more indirect means. Um, so, why the age of imperialism? Why suddenly in the 1850s did the countries of Europe and also to a lesser extent the United States become involved in a race to colonize the world, to control the world? Reason number one usually is given as economic reasons. Because of a worldwide depression in the late 19th century, the countries of Europe sought both raw materials abroad and markets abroad. And that meant that they wanted to control areas, and that gave them a reason to create an empire. Now, once countries embarked on an empire, another consideration that often got involved with the imperial motive was strategy or military necessity. Once you created colonies or controlled colonies somewhere, you wanted to be able to protect those colonies, and to protect those colonies, you often needed other colonies or other places around the world to protect those colonies. So it became kind of a catch-22 situation. Once you set up colonies because of economic reasons, you needed more colonies for military reasons, and so forth and so forth and so forth. Uh, Another impulse defining the imperialist agenda of the late 19th century was the spread of Christianity. That had been a driving motive in imperial ambitions really since the early 16th century. But in the 19th century, again, there was this renewed interest in the Christian churches spreading Christianity and supposedly improving the lifestyles and of the societies and cultures that Westerners came in contact with. So we got economic reasons, we got strategic considerations, we have Christianity and the urge to Christianize people around the world. You got a really important factor that has always been a driving force in human motivation, and that is gold. The desire to find gold, the desire to find wealth, the desire to find riches, and this was another motive of the age of imperialism. There's a whole bunch of other things we could talk about. The perceived overpopulation in Europe and the need for excess population, if you want to put it in those terms, of Europeans to move out of Europe. You had, of course, the technology and military advances in Europe, which allowed Europe to begin to control the world. I mean, once you have steamships and rifles, you had the kind of technology and the military advantages that allowed you to control some societies in the rest of the world. Another key motivation for the age of imperialism was what we could call irrational factors. With the age of newspapers and publicity, the exploits of explorers, the exploits of the Europeans on the front lines, creating empire, became part of newspaper coverage and everything. People followed their exploits. People were interested in it, and it became kind of this emotional, we're going to create this great empire, and we're going to be proud of our great empire. And so it became, the empire building became kind of thrown in there with national status, national power, and a sign of national power. And so because of the age of nationalism, which had been developing through the 19th century and everything, the creation of empire became caught up in this idea of the nation as a powerful entity. The last factor I mentioned with the age of imperialism is this motivation to bring civilization to the other peoples of the world who did not have the benefits of Western civilization. This was often associated with a whole bunch of different intellectuals in Europe in the late 19th century. This civilizing mission of the European. Rudyard Kipling, the English poet and writer, put it best in one of his poems where he wrote, "Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile to serve your captives' needs." In other words, it was this duty of the white man and everything to bring the white man's civilization to the rest of the world. And that was a really powerful God, if I could say this right, motive for 19th century individuals. This idea that they were bringing the benefits of civilization to the rest of the world. So just to sum up here, there's the age of imperialism. I mean, history has always been an age of imperial ambitions and the creation of empires. The period from 1850 to 1914 was the period in which the countries of northwestern Europe, France, the United Kingdom, Portugal, Spain, Netherlands, Belgium, etc., all kind of embarked on a race to colonize and imperialize the world. We're looking at a map here of the world in 1914, and you can see that Africa has been carved up, has been divided up amongst the imperial powers of Europe, with one exception, and that would have been Ethiopia. South America is not completely under imperial control, although you might argue for indirect imperial control. And most of Asia and everything also has significant control by European powers and everything. So that's what the situation was in 1914. Motivations, economic, strategic / political, Christianity, gold, irrational